It was 8:43 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Claire Bennett was convinced the world had forgotten about her. She had just finished putting her 6-year-old son, Eli, to bed, tucking him under the faded dinosaur blanket that had seen better days. The dishes were stacked in the sink, unpaid bills sat on the kitchen counter like silent threats, and the hum of the old refrigerator was the only sound keeping her company. Outside, the December wind howled against the thin walls of their small apartment in Brooklyn, making the windows rattle, as if they too were shivering from the cold. Claire wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this apartment. Not in this life. She once dreamed of owning a cozy bookstore, a quiet place where stories lived. But life had other plans. After Eli's father left when he was just a baby, Claire found herself navigating single motherhood with no roadmap and very little support. She worked 2 part-time jobs, one as a waitress in a rundown diner, and another as a night shift cleaner in an office building she couldn't afford to step into as anything but staff. Every paycheck vanished into rent, groceries, and keeping Eli's tiny world as safe and warm as possible. She was exhausted, bone-deep tired. And yet, when a knock echoed through the apartment, sharp and unexpected, her eyes snapped open as if jolted by some unseen current. Who knocks at this hour? Claire's mind raced. Friends didn't visit, family didn't call, and her neighbors were more accustomed to loud arguments than polite knocks. Cautiously, she approached the door, her fingers tightening around the edge of her old cardigan. Through the people, she saw him, a man in a dark coat, collar turned up against the cold, his breath fogging in the air. He wasn't threatening, but he didn't belong here. Not in this building, not on this floor. Claire hesitated. Common sense told her to ignore it, let him knock and leave. But something about the way he stood, shoulders slightly hunched, hands unclenched at his sides, stopped her. Against her better judgment, she opened the door. Just a crack. "Yes?" she asked, her tone cautious but not unkind. The man looked up, and for a fleeting second, she noticed the tiredness in his eyes, the kind that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from carrying a weight too long. "I'm sorry to bother you," he began, his voice rough, like someone not used to asking for help. "My car broke down a few blocks away. My phone's dead. I need to call for a ride. May I—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Claire's gaze swept over him. His clothes were expensive, but not flashy. His shoes, though polished, were dusted with city grime. He looked like a man who belonged in boardrooms, not broken-down neighborhoods. She should have said no, politely, firmly, for safety's sake. But then a thought struck her. How many times had she herself been stranded, ignored, or dismissed because she looked like she didn't belong? Claire sighed inwardly and opened the door wider. "You can come in to use the phone. Just the phone." The man nodded, grateful but restrained. "Thank you. I'm Nathan, by the way. Nathan Cole." The name didn't register in her mind then. Not yet. He stepped inside, careful not to track snow on the thin rug. The apartment was small, too small for someone like him, but warm, filled with the subtle scent of lavender from Eli's bedtime bath. Claire handed him her old cordless phone, the plastic worn and yellowed with time. Nathan murmured his thanks and dialed, pacing softly near the window as he spoke in low tones. While he made his call, Claire busied herself pretending to straighten the already neat countertop. But her mind was restless. What was a man like him doing here? His watch probably cost more than her monthly rent. Within a few minutes, he hung up. "I'm sorry," Nathan said, slipping the phone back onto the counter. "The tow truck is delayed. An hour, maybe 2. This neighborhood isn't exactly top priority." Claire offered a half smile. Tell me about that. An awkward silence settled. She wasn't sure what was expected of her. Offer him tea? Ignore him until he left? Nathan, sensing her discomfort, gestured to the door. I can wait outside. You've done enough. But the thought of anyone standing in that bitter wind, even a stranger, felt wrong. It's freezing out there, Claire said before she could stop herself. You can stay inside, just until your ride shows up. It was an act of kindness she didn't fully understand yet, one that would unravel both their lives in ways neither of them could have predicted. Claire spent the next morning trying to shake the unease that had settled in her chest. Nathan, if that was his real name, remained asleep on the couch long after dawn. She didn't disturb him. Instead, she busied herself making breakfast for Eli, scrambled eggs, toast, and a glass of orange juice that wasn't from concentrate because she knew he liked it fresh squeezed. Eli, ever the observant boy, noticed her distraction. Mom, you're stirring eggs that aren't there. She looked down. The spatula was scraping an empty pan. Right. Guess I'm still waking up, she smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. When Nathan finally stirred, he was disoriented, as if waking from a dream he didn't want to leave. He looked at Claire, eyes full of questions, but words held back. Good morning. I made coffee, she said, sliding a mug toward him across the counter.
Thank you. I wasn't sure you'd want me here. You're not the first stranger I've helped, Claire admitted, but you're the first one who doesn't even know what street he collapsed on. Nathan's lips twitched in a half smile. Lucky me. But there was something off. No phone, no wallet, no ID. His clothes, while dirty, were expensive, the kind of fabric that held its shape. He wasn't homeless. He wasn't running from poverty. He was running from something else. Claire decided not to press, for now. While Nathan took a shower, Claire went about her chores. As she folded laundry, a small folded piece of paper fell out of Nathan's jacket. She hesitated, staring at it. She shouldn't invade his privacy. Yet, curiosity tugged at her stronger than her conscience. It was a business card. Plain, elegant. The kind of card that whispered wealth instead of shouting it. Her breath caught. Nexora, the tech giant that had appeared on every news outlet 6 months ago after a data leak scandal. The company's CEO had gone silent, vanished from the media. She stared at the name. It couldn't be him. Could it? Claire didn't confront him right away. Instead, she watched. Nathan was polite, helpful. He cleaned up after himself, even fixed the loose cabinet hinge she had meant to repair for weeks. But there was a sadness to him, a man carrying a burden too heavy for one soul. Later that evening, as golden light spilled into the kitchen, Eli and Nathan sat at the table playing a game of chess. Claire watched from the doorway, unseen. You're good at this, Nathan said, as Eli moved his rook with a determined grin. Mom taught me. She says life is a lot like chess. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a piece to protect the ones that matter most. Nathan's gaze lifted, meeting Claire's eyes across the room. There was a weight in his expression, a silent acknowledgement that the boy's words had struck deeper than Eli could understand. You're a smart kid, Eli. And you're sad, Eli replied bluntly. Nathan chuckled. That obvious, huh? Eli nodded, then asked the kind of question only a child could ask without malice. Are you running from something bad? Nathan didn't answer, but the silence was an answer in itself. 2 days passed. On the third morning, Claire woke up to find a sleek black car parked across the street. 2 men in suits stood beside it, scanning the neighborhood with the sharpness of hawks. Nathan saw them too. His face paled. I have to go, he said abruptly, grabbing his jacket. Who are they, Nathan? Claire demanded. They're from Nexora, or at least they used to be. They don't want me to talk. You're the CEO, aren't you? I was. Nathan looked cornered, trapped. I uncovered something they've buried deep about the software. It's not just data tracking. It's surveillance on a scale people aren't ready to comprehend. I tried to shut it down. They didn't like that. Claire's heart pounded. This wasn't a petty company dispute. This was dangerous. And yet, the man standing before me was not a corporate shark. He was a man who had seen too much, who was trying to do the right thing and getting punished for it. "You can't face this alone," Claire said firmly. "I already am." But before he could step out, Eli's small voice stopped them. "Stay. We can hide you." Claire smiled despite the fear. Eli's innocence was a shield stronger than any corporate armor. That night, the strangers in suits didn't leave. Claire and Nathan sat at the kitchen table in the dim light, while Eli slept upstairs. The tension was palpable. "I never thought I'd find sanctuary in a place like this among people like you." "People like us?" Claire raised her eyebrow. "Kind, honest, unafraid to care." Claire shook her head. "We're just people, Nathan, trying to get through life without losing our humanity." Nathan's hand covered hers across the table. The contact was warm, grounding. "I spent years building walls. You let me in with one act of kindness. Why?" "Because I've needed kindness before, and someone was there for me." Nathan's grip tightened. "Then maybe it's my turn to do the same." The next morning, the black car was still there. Claire's hands trembled as she made breakfast. She wasn't used to fear like this, the kind that crawls into your bones and whispers, "You're not safe." But looking at Nathan across the table, she realized he was far more used to it than he ever should be. "You can't hide forever," Claire said quietly. "I don't intend to, but I needed time to figure out my next move. And now?"
"I've made my decision." Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Nathan stiffened. Claire's heart stopped. But when she opened the door, it wasn't men in suits. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, holding a basket of muffins. "I saw those men lurking. Figured you might need reinforcements," she said, winking. Claire almost cried. Nathan smiled, a real smile. "You have brave neighbors." "Bravery and a stubborn sense of justice," Claire said. "It's the neighborhood motto." Later that day, Nathan finally told her the full story. Nexora's latest project, it was supposed to be a harmless virtual assistant, but the coding, the backdoor access, it could do more than schedule appointments or order groceries. It could listen, record, track not just data, but thoughts, habits, behaviors, predict actions, influence choices. Claire felt sick. And no one knew? Some did, but I was the first with enough power to stop it. Or I tried to. He handed her a flash drive. "This is the evidence, the code, internal memos, everything. If this goes public, Nexora burns, but so will anyone who touches it." Claire stared at the small piece of plastic that somehow felt heavier than the world. She understood now why Nathan was hunted and why he had run to nowhere, hoping to find someone who would care enough to help him. That evening, while Nathan and Claire sat in the dim glow of the kitchen, Eli wandered in, holding his favorite book. "Mom, can Nathan read me the story tonight?" The question was innocent, but it was more powerful than any plea or argument. Nathan looked at Claire, silently asking for permission. She nodded. As Nathan read, his voice softened, reshaped itself, not as a CEO, not as a fugitive, but as a man rediscovering what it meant to belong. Eli curled up next to him, completely unaware of the storm swirling beyond their tiny house. When the story ended, Eli asked another question, soft, sleepy, but devastating. "Nathan, will you still be here tomorrow?" Nathan's voice cracked. "I hope so, buddy." That night, Claire and Nathan sat at the kitchen table long after Eli had fallen asleep.
I can't run anymore, Nathan said. But if I release this, I won't survive it. Then don't do it alone, Claire said firmly. She had a plan. She reached out to an old friend, Rachel Kim, an investigative journalist known for bringing giants to their knees. Rachel had always told Claire, if you ever have a story that could change the world, call me. This was that story. Nathan hesitated. If you help me, you're putting Ellie at risk. Claire shook her head. Ellie deserves to grow up in a world where people don't back down from doing what's right. Nathan looked at her, something fragile and fierce shining in his eyes. You're braver than most CEOs I've met. You're not so bad yourself, Claire smiled. Rachel came that night. She set up her camera in Claire's modest living room using a simple backdrop of the bookshelf filled with Ellie's toys. This needs to look real, because it is. Nathan sat before the camera, his hands trembling slightly. Claire stood behind the camera, giving him a look that said, "You're not alone." He began speaking. At first, his voice was measured, cautious, but as he described the extent of Nexora's deception, his words became clearer, sharper, full of a raw honesty that no corporate press conference could fake. He told the world about the surveillance, the manipulation, the silencing tactics, and he told them why he ran. When it was done, the silence in the room was deafening. "You think it'll be enough?" Nathan asked, turning to Claire. "It will," Rachel said, "because truth always finds a way." The video went viral within hours. By morning, reporters were at the end of the street. Nexora was issuing furious denials, but the evidence was irrefutable. Nathan couldn't leave the house without cameras following him, but there was a shift in the air. For the first time, Nathan wasn't running. He was standing his ground. And Claire? She realized her home had become the epicenter of a storm that wasn't just about tech giants or scandals. It was about people remembering that kindness, courage, and human connection still mattered. Eli, of course, was thrilled that his best friend Nathan was on TV. But the cost wasn't small. Claire received threats. Nathan's name was dragged through the mud. Yet in the eye of the storm, their small kitchen table became a war room of truth. 3 days after the broadcast, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a phone call, but a letter. It was from Nexora's board of directors. They wanted a meeting, not to silence Nathan, but to offer him something unexpected, the chance to rebuild Nexora from within, to restructure it, to create the transparent, ethical company he had dreamed of. "Why now?" Claire asked skeptically. "Because the world is watching," Nathan said, holding up his phone showing millions of comments of people demanding change. Nathan looked at Claire and Eli. "I'll only do it if you both come with me," he said. Eli's eyes widened. "Me too?" Claire smiled, ruffling his hair. "Looks like we're going to have to buy you a tie, kid." The boardroom at Nexora's headquarters was nothing like Nathan remembered. Where once stood gleaming glass walls and modern art, now there were barriers, physical and emotional. But there was also something new in the air: accountability. The world had seen the video. People had chosen sides, and the board was realizing they couldn't silence the truth anymore. Nathan walked in, not as a CEO begging for his position back, but as a man who had survived the worst and was still standing. Claire and Eli walked beside him, his anchor, his proof that he hadn't lost everything. "I'm not interested in power," Nathan began. "I'm interested in rebuilding, transparently, for real." The board was skeptical, but they weren't foolish. Nexora's reputation was hanging by a thread, and the man who had exposed their darkest secrets was now the only one people trusted. They struck a deal. Nathan would lead Nexora's ethical transformation, under one condition: full public oversight. Independent audits, live-streamed board meetings, a corporate culture where whistleblowers would be rewarded, not punished. It wasn't just a win for Nathan. It was a win for people who had never been listened to before. But after the meetings, after the press conferences, it wasn't the headlines that mattered most. It was the quiet moments back home. It was Eli showing Nathan his school project about everyday heroes, where he'd draw Nathan with a cape and a laptop. It was Claire finding Nathan asleep on the couch with Eli curled up beside him, both of them exhausted from building a Lego city. "I'm better at corporate reform than flipping pancakes," Nathan admitted, laughing. Claire smiled, watching them from the doorway. "Good thing we're not asking you to be perfect, just real." The video had sparked something far larger than they had imagined. All across the country, stories emerged. Employees from other companies stepped forward, sharing injustices they had been forced to swallow. The movement Nathan and Claire ignited wasn't about Nexora anymore. It was about transparency, accountability, and the human side of technology. Claire was approached to start a nonprofit, an organization that would support whistleblowers, protect those brave enough to stand up for what's right. She called it the Lighthouse Project, because sometimes the ones lost in the storm just needed a light to guide them home. Nathan, when asked to comment about the future of Nexora, simply said, "We've spent too long building walls. It's time we build windows." One evening, after a long day of interviews and meetings, Nathan and Claire sat on the porch of Claire's modest home, the place where it had all started. The sunset painted the sky in hues of gold and lavender. Eli was chasing fireflies in the yard. "Did you ever think this would be your life?" Nathan asked. "Not in a million years," Claire said, resting her head on his shoulder, "but I wouldn't trade it." Nathan reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Claire's breath caught. He didn't open it immediately. Instead, he looked at her with that quiet intensity that had drawn him in from the start. "I came into your life as a stranger, Claire, but you didn't just let me in. You reminded me what it means to have a home, a family." He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver band, not extravagant, not showy, but real. "Marry me," Nathan said. "Not because we survived this storm together, but because I don't want to face any future storms without you." Claire's eyes welled with tears. Eli, having overheard, ran up to them. "Are you guys getting married? Do I get to be the ring guy?" Claire laughed through her tears, nodding. "I think you just promoted yourself to best man." Their wedding wasn't a grand affair. It was held in the park down the street, where Eli had played countless afternoons. The guests were neighbors, friends, people who had stood by them when it mattered. Mrs. Thompson brought homemade pies. Rachel, the journalist, read a speech that left everyone misty-eyed. When Nathan and Claire exchanged vows, they didn't promise perfection. They promised truth, partnership, the courage to always face the unknown together. And in that moment, it became clear. The secret that had once threatened to destroy Nathan had, in the end, saved him. Because truth doesn't just expose what's wrong, it builds what's right. A year passed. Nexora, now a symbol of corporate transformation, had become a case study in business schools across the country. The Lighthouse Project had grown into a nationwide network, protecting truth-tellers and fostering a new culture of integrity in workplaces. Nathan and Claire, now co-founders of the project, balanced their advocacy work with family life. Eli thrived in the new school Nathan had helped fund, one that taught not just science and math, but ethics and empathy. One evening, sitting by the fireplace, Nathan looked at Claire and Eli, now asleep on the couch, their heads leaning against each other. He realized this was the life he had never known he wanted. A life where courage wasn't in headlines, but in small, everyday choices. A life where strangers became family. In a world where secrets often destroy, one act of compassion changed everything. Because sometimes the stranger you let in
is the one who helps you find the version of yourself you lost along the way. The days that followed felt like borrowed time. Nathan's presence became a quiet rhythm in Claire and Eli's life. He never overstepped, never imposed, but was simply there. Every morning he'd appear with coffee and a smile that softened the fatigue etched into Claire's face. In the evenings he'd sit on the porch with Eli, teaching him how to fold paper planes or talking about the constellations above. But there was a shadow lingering, a truth Claire could sense Nathan was hiding. One afternoon, as they sat together watching Eli chase fireflies, Claire spoke. "You're running from something, Nathan, aren't you?" Nathan didn't respond right away. His eyes followed Eli, a boy so full of life despite having so little. "I'm not running," he said softly, "but there are people who want me gone. My existence complicates their power." Claire turned to him. "Are you in danger?" Nathan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm used to being a target. But this time, it's not about me. They want to silence anyone who believes the world can be kinder." His words hung in the air, heavy and raw. Claire realized then Nathan's disappearance wasn't about personal scandal or corporate rivalry. It was about ideals, about silencing a man who refused to play by the cruel rules of power. "You can't hide forever," Claire said. "I know," Nathan admitted. "But right now, I need to figure out who I can still trust." Claire reached for his hand. "You've already found them." The next evening, a black car appeared at the end of the driveway. Claire's heart raced. She recognized the insignia, Nexora Security. Nathan stood up slowly. "Stay inside, Claire. Lock the door." But Claire didn't move. "No. If they found you, then we face them together." A man in a tailored suit approached, his smile sharp. "Mr. Cole, the board is growing impatient. You've made quite a mess." Nathan's jaw tightened. "What they call a mess, I call accountability." His gaze flickered to Claire. "And who is this? Another liability?" Claire stepped forward, unflinching. "He's not going with you." The man chuckled. "You're brave, or foolish." "I've been both," Claire said steadily. "But I know what it's like to be discarded when you're no longer useful. Not this time." Nathan spoke then, his tone razor sharp. "You can tell the board they'll have to destroy me publicly if they want me gone, because I will not disappear quietly." The man's mask of civility cracked. "Then prepare yourself for war." As the car drove away, Claire's legs gave out. Nathan caught her. "You just declared war on a billion-dollar corporation." Nathan smiled, breathless. "No, we just declared war." Claire's small home became a war room. Nathan unveiled files, documents, internal memos that painted a damning picture of Nexora's corruption, exploited workers, suppressed safety reports. It wasn't just a scandal, it was a systemic rot that Nathan had spent years trying to expose from the inside. But now they had no choice but to go public. Claire contacted an old friend, a journalist who still believed in truth over headlines. Together they arranged an anonymous expose that would shake Nexora to its core. On the night of the broadcast, Claire, Nathan, and Eli sat huddled on the couch. The world outside was quiet, as if holding its breath. The reporter's voice filled the room, unveiling the secrets that had been buried for too long. Claire glanced at Nathan. His expression wasn't triumphant. It was weary, yet peaceful. He hadn't wanted vengeance. He had wanted to restore something he thought was lost: integrity. The next morning, their house was surrounded by news vans. The world wanted to know the face of the woman who had sheltered a fugitive billionaire and stood by him. But Claire wasn't afraid anymore. She stepped outside, Eli's hand in hers, Nathan by her side.
A reporter thrust a microphone toward her. "Claire, why risk everything for a man you barely knew?" Claire smiled softly. "Because when someone's been thrown away by the world, sometimes all it takes is one person to let them in." Nathan squeezed her hand. They had not only exposed Nexora's corruption, but had found something greater: a family, not by blood, but by choice. The afternoon sun spilled through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across Claire's modest living room. The world outside seemed ordinary: cars passing by, kids playing down the block. But inside, everything had shifted. Nathan sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, his eyes heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. Claire had made tea, though neither of them had touched it. "You need to know why I'm here, Claire," Nathan began, his voice quiet but edged with resolve. "I wasn't just running from a scandal. I'm running because of what I discovered inside Nexora." Claire sat opposite him, listening. Every fiber of her told her this wasn't just business drama. This was something deeper, darker. Nexora's AI, Project Viren, was designed for predictive analytics. It could forecast market trends, human behavior, even disease outbreaks, Nathan explained. But the board, they repurposed it. They began feeding it data from hospitals, insurance companies, even private therapy sessions. They sold that data to whoever paid the most: pharma companies, political campaigns, even law enforcement. Claire's breath hitched. They were selling people's private health records and using them to manipulate outcomes, Nathan said. "Imagine an algorithm that knows your weaknesses, what illness you might develop, what medication you'll need before you even know it yourself. Then imagine that information being auctioned off to the highest bidder." Claire felt sick. That's inhuman. Nathan's gaze softened. "That's why I left. That's why they want me silenced." Eli had wandered in, quietly clutching his sketchpad, sensing the tension. Claire smiled at him, gestured for him to sit. She wanted him close, wanted him to hear this. Because this wasn't just a story about corporations and power. This was about the world Eli would grow up in. "Nathan, what do you plan to do with this information?" Claire asked, bracing herself. Nathan exhaled slowly. "I want to expose them. I want the public to see what they're doing. But going public would paint a target on everyone around me." His eyes flickered to Eli, then back to Claire. "I can't involve you in this." Claire's reply was instant. "You already have, Nathan, but you're not doing this alone." Nathan's walls, years of calculated detachment, cracked in that moment. He wasn't used to people standing beside him, not without contracts or conditions. That evening, the three of them sat together on the worn-out couch. Eli had fallen asleep, his head resting on Nathan's lap, his sketchpad still clutched in tiny hands. Claire noticed how Nathan's fingers, once rigid with tension, now moved gently, brushing Eli's hair in soothing strokes. "You don't have to stay," Claire whispered. Nathan's response was soft, but firm. "I'm not going anywhere." The next few days passed in a haze of planning and watching their backs. Claire's small home became their command center. They worked in shifts, Nathan diving into encrypted files, and Claire coordinating with a journalist Nathan trusted from his past. It wasn't glamorous. There were no cinematic montages, no thrilling chase sequences. Just exhaustion, anxiety, and long nights where the weight of what they were doing settled heavily in the room. But amidst the tension, something else blossomed. Something quiet, yet undeniable. Claire found herself laughing at Nathan's dry humor. Nathan found solace in Claire's unwavering calm. And Eli had found a hero in Nathan. One evening, as Claire was washing dishes, she noticed Nathan standing outside, watching the sunset. He looked lost in thought. She stepped beside him. "You still think this is a mistake?" Nathan didn't answer immediately. His eyes followed the horizon where the sun bled into twilight. "Every choice I've made has been calculated, strategic. But this, helping you, staying here, it's the first time I'm acting on faith." Claire smiled, reaching for his hand. "Faith isn't blind, Nathan. Sometimes it's seeing something no one else does." Their hands lingered, tentative, exploring a language neither of them had spoken in years. The following morning, the journalist arrived. Her name was Maria Ortega, gritty, relentless, with a reputation for exposing the kind of stories that governments feared. "I hope you're ready for a war," she said, scanning the room. Nathan glanced at Claire and Eli. "No," he said. "We're ready for the truth." Together, they laid out the evidence. Maria listened, took notes, asked brutal questions. But by the end of it, she looked at Nathan with something resembling respect. "This will shake Nexora to its core, but you need to be ready. They'll come after you, after all of you." Claire met her gaze without flinching. "They can try." As Maria left, Nathan turned to Claire. "Do you really want to be part of this?" Claire's answer was simple. "You're not part of this, Nathan. This is your life, and if you're going to fight for it, so will we."
Nathan had always thought of redemption as a distant, unattainable ideal. But now, sitting in Claire's kitchen, with Eli's laughter echoing down the hallway, it felt real. For the first time in years, Nathan Cole wasn't running. He was standing his ground. The next morning, Claire awoke to the soft glow of dawn and a world that had already changed. Nathan was standing by the window, phone in hand, scrolling through news headlines. His face was pale, his jaw clenched. Claire, still drowsy, sat up. "What is it?" she asked. "They published it," Nathan said, almost breathless. He turned the screen toward her. "Nexora scandal exposed. Whistleblower reveals truth behind digital exploitation." It was everywhere. Headlines, videos, opinion pieces. The public had seized on the story, and now it was spreading like wildfire. But the most unexpected thing was how people reacted, not with apathy or disbelief, but with fury. Protesters were already gathering outside Nexora's headquarters. Former employees were speaking out, corroborating Nathan's claims. Users of the platform were deleting their accounts en masse, their voices unified in a rare collective outcry. Enough! Nathan sat at the edge of Claire's kitchen table, the weight of it all pressing on his shoulders. "I thought I'd be relieved when this came out, but I'm terrified." Claire reached across the table, resting her hand over his. "You should be terrified. It means you still care." Nathan looked at her then, really looked at her. The woman who had let a stranger into her home, the woman who had risked everything to help him when she had nothing left to give. And for the first time in a long time, Nathan felt anchored. "I don't deserve you," he said quietly. Claire smiled, shaking her head. "That's not your choice." As they sat together, Claire's son Eli came bounding into the kitchen, sleepy-eyed but smiling. He climbed onto Nathan's lap without hesitation, as if he had always belonged there. Nathan's arms wrapped around the boy instinctively. It was in that simple moment that Nathan realized this wasn't just a battle against a corrupt company. It was a battle for the kind of world Eli would grow up in. The media storm raged on for days, but life inside Claire's small apartment remained strangely calm. Nathan had been offered interviews, book deals, speaking engagements. He declined them all. He didn't want fame.
He didn't want to be a symbol. He wanted to be a better man. One evening, as golden sunlight poured through the windows, Nathan found himself watching Claire and Eli as they built a pillow fort in the living room. Their laughter echoed off the walls, warm and real. "I've been thinking," Nathan said later as they shared a quiet dinner, "about starting over. Something small, something honest." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "A community tech hub. A place where people learn about technology, how to protect themselves, how to build things that actually help others. For free. No ads, no algorithms. Just people helping people." Claire's smile was soft, approving. "I think that sounds exactly like what the world needs." And in that moment, Nathan knew he had already found what he had been searching for. Not redemption through headlines, but through the slow, patient work of rebuilding trust, starting with the people right in front of him. Later that night, as Eli slept soundly in his room, Claire and Nathan sat on the small balcony, watching the city lights flicker against the dark canvas of night. "Do you think people can really change?" Claire asked, her voice barely a whisper. Nathan didn't answer immediately. He looked at his hands, once used to build empires that stole, now longing to build sanctuaries that healed.
"I don't know if we change," he said slowly. "I think maybe we just finally see ourselves clearly and choose who we want to be from that moment on." Claire leaned her head on his shoulder, the silence between them filled with understanding. Under the quiet hum of the city, a new chapter was quietly beginning. Not one of dramatic's victories, but of small, persistent acts of kindness that together could change everything. Weeks turned into months. The scandal had reshaped the landscape. Nexora's top executives faced indictments, congressional hearings were televised, and grassroots tech communities began sprouting in cities across the country. But for Nathan, Claire, and Eli, life settled into something quieter, something more profound. Nathan's community tech hub opened in an abandoned library downtown. He called it the Workshop. It wasn't flashy, no branding, no slick interfaces, but people came, young and old. They came because it felt different, safe, real. Nathan taught kids how to code, not to chase profits, but to solve problems in their neighborhoods. He showed seniors how to protect their digital privacy. He built repair stations where people could fix old devices instead of discarding them. And every afternoon, Claire and Eli would stop by after school. Eli became the unofficial helper, proudly explaining how to install software updates to anyone who would listen. Claire had started working with a local shelter, offering free classes on digital literacy to single parents trying to rebuild their lives. The irony wasn't lost on her, that a stranger's knock had once changed her life, and now she was opening doors for others. One evening, after closing up the workshop, Nathan found Claire waiting outside under the soft glow of a street lamp. She held 2 cups of coffee, offering him one as he approached. "You look like a man who's carrying the world on his back," she teased. "Not anymore. Feels like I'm finally sharing the weight." They walked in silence through the quiet streets, the city's usual chaos replaced with a rare kind of stillness. When they reached Claire's apartment, she paused at the door. "You know, when you first showed up, I thought you were going to wreck what little life I had left. Turns out you were the piece I didn't know was missing." Nathan's throat tightened. "I don't still know what I'm doing, Claire. I don't have some grand plan. Some days I wake up and feel like I'm still running." Claire reached out, taking his hand firmly in hers. "You're not running anymore. You're here. You stayed. That's what matters."
He looked into her eyes, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man trying to outrun his past. He felt like a man choosing to build a future. "I don't want to stay just as a guest, Nathan. I want to stay because this feels like home." Claire smiled, the kind of smile that reaches deep, softens walls, and builds bridges. "Then stay," she said simply. Inside, Eli was waiting with a grin, holding up a hand-drawn picture. It was of the three of them standing in front of the workshop, smiling. The title, scrawled in crayon, read, "Our Family." Nathan crouched down, taking the picture, his heart full. In a world obsessed with headlines, likes, and metrics, Nathan had found something immeasurable, a home built not on status, but on trust, a family not born of blood, but of choice, a life not defined by past mistakes, but the courage to let someone in and to be let in return. The stranger she let in wasn't a hero. He wasn't a savior. He was just a man who, given a second chance, chose kindness over fear. And sometimes that's all it takes to change everything.